So welcome, Nathan.
Hi, great to be here, Karen.
And great to have you here, Nathan. It's fantastic. I love I've been watching some of your videos, and you've
Oh
got,
no.
I know, and let me tell you, they're false. No, I'm not joking. It's bloody
I'd be okay.
fantastic.
I'd be like, all right, I've got a pen and paper. Like, let's go. Like.
No, you're fantastic. You're super high energy, and I absolutely love that. I was watching you doing one of them was the Venga bus is coming. Da, da,
Oh yeah,
da.
it's not the only. It's not a novelty. I don't do anything at my weddings that are novelty. That actually was the first. That was back in 2021. That was actually the very first wedding. So Colin and Sarah, and Colin's actually a good friend of mine now because he's actually in the industry. So he's a DJ as well. He's been around for a very long time in the industry, and I that was the first wedding back after the COVID lockdowns, that second big
Oh
one, the
yeah.
really one that hit hard. And so November 6th, 2021, won't forget it. And it was just kind of like my goal of that night was obviously, apart from just doing my normal thing, was to really give a bit of extra flavor, given that the rules was finally relaxed. There was some like recommendations of, if you wanted to wear it, you could wear the mask and so forth. But generally there was like a need to just sort of get us back to
Yeah.
party time. And so yeah, I love a good conga line, and that song's classic. So I've done that conga line, that song more than once at several of my weddings, and it's always a hit. So
I love it. And now everyone listening to this is now going to have the Venga bus in their brain, and every time we talk about anything, they're going
I
to be
hope
walking
so.
along. Da, 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 da.
It's a classic. Can't go
Oh
past it.
God, I love it. Now you when you're talking about weddings and that, now you are very successful. MC and all sorts of other things like a host and what have you. Like you sit on the stage, don't sit, you are high energy on the stage like a rock star. But it hasn't always been like that. So, when you were at school, you were
Hmm.
bullied and
Hmm.
take us back to that time, because that was a time when you were incredibly introvert and not going through a good time. So, I'm keen on this transition, but take us back to the schoolyard if you want.
Yeah, I know, of course. I mean, that this is, this is the story I've recounted many times in the sense that, it sort of culminated at sort of the better end of the story, which is skipping ahead a couple of years, but I eventually ended up creating an anti-bullying program called It's Not Cool to Be Cruel that partnered with the West Tigers Football League, as well as the anti-violence, Enough is Enough anti-violence movement with Ken Marslow. But to sort of backtrack from that, it was a bit of a journey to get there in the first place. Yeah, look, I'll never forget the day. Like, there was a singular day I remember I got very burnt into my brain in kindergarten where I I was always bullied just because I was just bright and wanted to succeed and just was just me. And like kids are pretty brutal when they're in
Mm.
when they're children. So they're. I remember one day we were playing dress up or something. There was like all these different things. We had some free time, so kids going around doing whatever they want. And I think someone want one of these antagonists of mine, he like wanted one of the wigs or something that I wanted to pick up. And so he's with the hat, I think a police hat or something. So he's like snatching it off me and I snatch it back. And then he takes it back off me. And I just had enough this day. Like normally I was a pretty placid kind of like normal, like introverted child. I didn't really say much, didn't do the confrontation thing. But I had so much frustration, anger in me. I went and pulled his hair. Anyway, she saw it, and so classic story of the victim getting the punishment. And okay, look, to be fair, I deserved it, so I understand it. Like, I'm an adult now, I can figure that out. So she put me in kindergarten jail, which was in the corner. Now that's not where the story ends, though. So obviously, I was distraught. I was thinking, oh my god, like I don't get disciplined. That's not what I do. I don't do things in order to garner discipline. Unfortunately, it ended up being a bit of a core memory for me because, I mean, bless her, my kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Hamish, is an absolute delight of a woman, a very big influence in my early childhood. But she accidentally forgot to release me
Oh,
from that space. So they're all like heading out, off into lunch and everything. And I'm thinking, well, I guess this is just part of my punishment, that I have to miss lunch and I have to stay here. And I was a yes sir, no sir kind of kid. So if you don't tell me to go, I'm just gonna stay. Anyway, she happened to come back halfway through lunch and saw me in the corner. She says, "What are you still doing?" I was like, "Well, you told me, Brian. Oh, you told me I was supposed to stay in the corner." She goes, "Oh my God," she felt so bad. And so she, picked me up and got me out with lunch and wiped my tears and said, off you go. And, sorry about that. And she felt so bad. So, but I'll never forget that, not because I want to make her feel bad if she ever hears this, and we've recounted this story before, but it was indicative of like this struggle that I felt for a long time of not being a confrontational person, but at the same time, every time those few little moments I ended up piping up, I would get in trouble for it. So it was a recurring problem where I was bullied a lot, put on the outer, because on the opposite, like as long as no one was friends with me or were too friendly with me, they were on the better side of the battleground in the childhood, in the school ground. And I was also put on detention one time because I threw sticks back at people, and like it's just like things that just it's just I always caught myself like that. So by the time I got to high school, I was just like so risk adverse. I would do everything possible to avoid those circumstances. That all changed though when I realized that I had this innate desire to become a really good public speaker. And that initially spurned from year 6 when I was in school, and my mate Sebastian, who I still have we're best mates to this day. I never forget turning to him one day when one of my main aggressors in primary school he was a really good public speaker and always doing the competitions and stuff. And so in year 6, the only thing I'd ever purposely bombed academically was public speaking competitions. And because it was compulsory every year, as all kids know, I just wanted nothing to do with it. It was too exposing for me, way too exposing. And I turned, after like 4 years of doing this, I was sick of shying away from this. I knew I had to succeed at it. So I turned to my mate and I said, I'm going to be better than that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to be better than that when I get to high school. And he goes, what, you, as if? And then turned around. So I was like, okay, I'm going to prove you wrong, mate. And so I did. I never let him down for that to this day. He goes, "Oh, hear this again." But I'm waiting for the day he gets married. That'll be in the speech for sure. But and I'll be like, "Look at me now, I'm your MC," which I think would be gold content. But anyway, point is that when I got to high school, I forged ahead. It was sort of this duality between being really exposed as the public speaking kid, the debating kid, the mock trial kid, the kid that was academically successful, but was always still, but it was so exposing. But at the same time, I loved public speaking. I loved the thrill of the prepared speeches. I initially had a love-hate relationship with impromptu speeches, but eventually grew to love them and to actually really lean into them and to become successful at them as well. And so, I had my fair share of wins at regional and state competitions and so forth on the circuit. But it was not until I was actually just a little bit before that, when I was 14, I went on my very first cruise. And that was what really opened my eyes. There was this whole other world where you could be yourself and no one would judge you for what you were known for at school. You were just known for who you were in those 7 days or whatever. But plus that, and just the enigmatic presence of the cruise director and what they really brought to the table to completely transform, bring the energy, bring the vibe, be the excitement, be the mini celebrity on board, be the face of the entire voyage, was just mind-blowing. And it just showed me that there was another world that I could access if I just worked hard, pushed against my aggressors in the most academic and most personally growing sort of development kind of way. And I, sort of too long didn't read, managed to accomplish that. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. I want to talk about cruise ships in a minute, but I just want to go back to the anti-bullying program that you created. And it was sponsored by West Tigers Football Club and all that kind of stuff. Where did you go out, and how did it look? Did you go out and sort of present it to other schools, or did your school?
I did. Yeah. So the way that it all came about, actually, and I credit Mum to this, but I know she'll be listening to this at some point, so shout out, Mum. Always been one of my biggest supporters. Now, it's like I feel like I should just employ her in my business, because she's always like commenting on my Instagram or Facebook pages, or helping. She was there obviously helping out at the beginning with my business as well. She's been there from day one. Love her a lot. But so I actually started as a competition in the what was it called? I forget the name of it now, but it was like a young inventors competition or something. I have to look through my records, but essentially it was some competition that I don't think they do anymore, but it was only for 7 and 8. And the idea was that you were meant to come up with some sort of either engineering or conceptual program
Yeah.
or some prototype of some sort that was meant to change the world or
Yeah.
to deliver to some tangible problem and solution. And so I actually was a part of the state. It was only two levels, the regional and then the state awards. And in the first one, I did like this healthy lunchbox thing. It was pretty great, and I actually got to the state award for it, and I was, credited for it. And because I knew I only had one more year at it, I was like, what am I going to do for the following year? There was also a state excellence award where you won a prize. So there was like the best of the best. And I was like, ooh, I want that so bad. So as I'm always that kind of person, never stop being that. So mum actually was the one that inspired me when I was thinking of ideas of what to do. She said, how about you do an anti-bullying program? I was like, you know what? That sounds like a fantastic idea. Again, super exposing, right? Like
Yeah.
throwing the mirror straight up, and people, but at the same time, that's just the duality of my life. I've always just known I've been this highly exposed kind of environment, but at the same time, knowing deep down that as much as it is conflicting, I have to make it work.
Yeah.
And mum actually came up with the name "It's Not Cool to Be Cruel" either, which was really cool. And it was composed of a website that was meant to, along with a whole bunch of like media collateral, like rulers, pencils, bookmarks, and pen and stickers and so forth. It was meant to be presented as like a presentation to schools, and then I'd provide my own story, and then people would supplementarily go to the website and see the posters, and it would kind of like be like a conceptual changing of culture shift in the school, right? A PSA kind of, a public awareness program that would all tie in together every day by reading the pencils and everything else like that. I was quite enterprising for a child, I must admit. Anyway, I did win that state excellence award, and I was really proud of that. And if anyone knows what the prize was, it was for a chair. I won a furniture chair. So there you go. And I used that for many years. It was actually got quite uncomfortable, but that's another story. But I was proud of that chair. And yeah, so overall, like that ended up actually how it ended up becoming like a bigger thing was I got a random call from a guy named Wayne Cousins who I don't know if he's there anymore, but he used to be the communications and marketing officer for West Tigers. And he called me up one day and he said, I've got an idea. And he put this idea to me and he said, I want to see if we can to make this work. I think with you as like the figurehead, we can go to these schools. And so over a number of meetings and so forth, we came up with this strategy, reformed it, got new partners involved, new collateral partners and printers and so forth. Lions Club became involved. Rotary Club was my initial benefactor, but then the Lions Club of Camden came into it afterwards. And then Cam Marslew also wanted to get involved. So he'd just been in the news after his son, you may remember the story, the pizza delivery kid who got shot at his door. It was a big story back in the day.
God. No, I
yeah.
don't.
And so Ken Marsden created the anti-violence movement and Enough is Enough. And then essentially his whole sort of the whole story is essentially about his journey of rehabilitating and forgiving his son's murderer in prison, and then he re-shot back to the news in sad fashion, actually. Unfortunately, when he came out of prison, the guy reoffended and he went back to jail. It's kind of a really sad story. But the better news of it all, the better side of it is that Ken Mars has still created an incredibly inspiring and impactful and influential anti-violence movement. Anyway, so we all partnered together, and I did the program in about 9 or 10 different schools across the New South Wales Sydney metro region, including my own high school, my own primary school, etc. And like I'll never forget this one moment. Actually, it was really, really cool. I remember this one moment where a kid came to me and he was so excited because he is an autistic child and he'd been bullied quite a lot, but his favorite team was the West Tigers. And the reason why I know all of this stuff is because the mum reached out to me on email shortly after it came about. And she was the one that actually inspired the school to get it involved on behalf of her child. The really cool thing was that her son one day was this bullied child where kids didn't understand. He's part of one of those, the singular, small little special needs school. After my visit, what had happened is that he'd actually brought his football to school, and he got it signed by one of the West
Oh,
Tigers
wow.
players that came joined us.
Yeah, yeah,
And the moment that happened, when the West Tigers players left and all the ceremony was over, all the kids started wanting to get to know him, and was like really jealous that he, like, but in a really friendly way, about
yeah,
wanted to know more about how he'd come about being able to get the signing and stuff. So, I was able to create this moment out of my story and my journey. I was able to create a moment for this one particular kid who, had been down and out, just like I had, but for different reasons. And that was really heartwarming. I'll never forget
mm,
that particular email. And I was just grateful that I was able to make a difference. I don't know where they are. I was a young kid, so I lost a lot of connection to keeping the momentum with the program. But I've still got all my records somewhere, and I even did I had Channel 10 do like a media thing in my house one day. It was kind of cool, actually. It was like I was preparing for all of this kind of stuff early in life. The Daily Telegraph did a spread on me at one point. I think you can find it on the article on somewhere online somewhere. A young me with again no beard. But yeah, it was quite the time, and it certainly, as much as I regretted to some degree, it sort of falling to the wayside. Life begins to take over,
yeah,
uni takes
yeah.
over, and all that. But it was definitely something that I hold dearly, and it was a big, big part of me recovering and becoming the reformed introvert extrovert, as I call myself now. So.
Yeah, I love that story, and I love that when you're talking about that one kid, and I'm very, very sure that you will have impacted many, many, many kids, and you didn't hear all the stories. But I always say that if you can impact one person with something you do, that's a success, and so
Absolutely.
it could be saving that one life, and I just think that's critical. Well, I love that. Yeah, I love that story. Now let's go back to the cruise ships. No, I'm not trivializing your anti-bullying.
No, 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 no,
I
no,
think
no.
that's fantastic. But
Of course.
I want to talk about your cruise. How old did you say you were when you first went on that? 14?
I joined the
No,
Grand
no,
Princess.
when
Oh,
you
sorry. Oh,
first,
when I went on that first cruise,
yeah,
I was 14.
yeah, 14. I went on I won't say the cruise, but anyway, it was a fun ship, and
Hmm.
I this is
By
years
the
ago.
fact that you're hiding that, I feel like you're going to say the Fair Star.
I was going to say that. No, look, I know nothing wrong with the Fair Star, the fun ship.
No, no, it was a great ship. I
It
just
was
I
fun.
just know you're hiding it because of how old the ship is. But that trust me, you think I don't know these things.
I did say 20 years ago. It might be 30 years ago. It might be even more than that.
Oh,
But
trust me, people have a lot of fond memories of that ship. I mean, I'm not part of that generation, but I know when I was on the Pacific Sun, which is now a scuttled ship itself, so it doesn't exist anymore. So I kind of have my own story about that as well, I guess now, in a different generation. People when I worked on ships would always talk about the Fair Star, it's, so
yeah.
I hear you, don't worry.
Best part, yeah, it was great actually. But except, I was locked in a cabin, with my auntie, and it was kind of small. And then we got uh seasick, and well, I got seasick, but there was also the flu or some other bug, that was
Oh
going
yeah,
around, and so
always, yeah.
everybody was sick, and I was like, and then these two groups of the two different cultures of the crew started fighting. Um,
Oh gee.
someone tried to throw someone overboard. It was
Oh
actually quite.
wow. That is intense. We didn't never had anywhere near as intensity as that. That is a lot.
Oh, it was very intense, and I think the best part was there was a celebrity on board, and I got to have pizza with her, and it was fantastic. But we only see above the deck.
Yes.
Basically, we only see what goes on below there. Like, what's life at sea really like? Because I
Oh,
only went once. Like, what's it like continually?
well, yeah, let's put it this way. Life at sea below deck is very different when you're on the Fair Star than when I joined in 2015. I will preface that because it was a much more of a Wild West. It was definitely, there was some unfortunate cases that occurred with Carnival, some big high-end cases that some really bad guest and crew interactions that
Yeah,
occurred around the beginning of the millennia that basically transformed the entire industry. And I agree with all the changes that occurred because realistically, you had a lot of there was a lot of not so wonderful things going on with that mix. And so, however, how the cruise industry is at the moment and how it is in general, what people can expect. Look, you have 40 plus nationalities working on board.
Mm.
There are Croatians and Serbians who, I guess, they say that they're rivals and whatnot. They work together beautifully alongside each other. You have this beautiful melting pot. That's just one example of many different sort of in the greater wider world, competing quote unquote nationalities who perhaps would be inclined, if they're not so progressive, to want to perpetuate racial stereotypes and conflict and so forth. But on board, that kind of thing gets staved out really quickly.
Mm.
And so it's a beautiful environment that truly fosters happiness and cohesiveness and allows for just this party. It's just like you go past the crew party door, the crew party door is brilliant, the crew only door. And if you go to anyone like a crew party night, like they're just so fun. Now it's a little bit changed since COVID, and I did a contract on the Coral last year, which I was able to see more of, like I was able to go back to some friends and see the kind of how things are going now. And it is quite different. It's recovering still. But generally, I've got a lot of beautiful memories of celebrating lots of different parties and social events and going off to shore and having a good time as well, which is all part of that sort of below deck atmosphere too, getting off and seeing the world in a way that, most guests don't even get to see, because we just want to immerse ourselves in local environments. We get to go to those ports often. So we want to explore new things. Depending on your rank, it can be a bit of a different experience as well. I will admit I was lucky to have had the privileges of it being a one stripe officer while on board. So I had an officer's cabin, and I had an officer steward who would clean my cabin regularly, whereas other grades of crew on board or staff on board had bunking scenarios, and they had to take care of their own facilities independently. But we were all subject to our crew, our emergency drill procedures. I was the first in charge of muster station, but I had to train them all on and know the protocols, and we all had to do the drills while you guys are offshore. We all have responsibilities that relate to making sure we're back to the ship on time and so forth. But there's a lot of it is generally one really big happy family. Different ships will have slightly different cultures on board, but typically there are our own little sort of microcosm of a family that really do bond around each other, do help each other, do try to, things are going on back home, we're there to support one another. There definitely, people aren't left alone, and there's just something intangible. There's about that 5%, even if I took you through all the career area, showed you every little nook and cranny, gave you the biggest lecture, I've had mum and dad come aboard. They love cruises, but yet there's that 5% that I'll never be able to ever get across to somebody unless they've been on ships. And it's funny because recently I did a wedding recently in the Hunter Valley in New South Wales. And as soon as I finished my outro, and I get that's my intro for the bridal entrance, I usually get this happen quite a lot where people say, "Oh, would you consider cruise ships?" And I go, "Yeah, like I was." And they go, "Oh, yes, we could totally tell from the moment you open your mouth." But in this particular occasion, I got someone called me over, and they said, "You're a cruise director, weren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "I was crew staff with Disney as well." So I was like, "Oh my God." And so we were obviously the whole night reminiscing. We were just talking that 5% extra language that's just unique to us. It was just such a beauty. In Australia, you don't get that too often, where you encounter people being on ships in the same job. And so it was a real delight to reminisce and talk about sort of each other's companies and what was different. We obviously know the differences, but first-hand experiences is always good to share. But there's that slight intangibility that I'll never be able to get across on any podcast, but certainly it's a great time. It's grueling if you don't like hard
Yeah.
work. It's tough if you don't like not being in the same place all the time. If it's also excruciating if you don't like following procedures and roles and responsibilities and having lots of like responsibility placed on your shoulder. But if you can move past all that and the low pay for an Australian anyway, it's definitely a career worth considering if you're willing to put in the hard work. And I credit so much of who I am now to it.
Wow. Yeah, I remember the cruise director on there, and I remember all the shows, and it was great energy. I don't know how you do it without being seasick. I spent most of my time up on deck watching the waves go by, and I'm just not a cruise person. But it was I remember one of the things that, and when you talk about that 5%, like a lot of people are on there and they're doing their thing and they're spending time with the family and in the pool and out of the pool and doing that kind of stuff. Because I spent a lot of time looking over the side and I wasn't providing burley, but while I was looking, I could see fishing lines coming from the kitchen, out of the windows, and they were actually catching fish.
Yeah, that's like it's one of those things that definitely doesn't happen now. But back in the day, but it's funny, there are remnants of that kind of like that kind of thing that really is like a massive no-no these days. I'll give you an example. Here's something fun that a lot of people probably don't know about unless you've spoken to crew. So there's the concept of and there's multiple cruise lines that have this. There's the concept of the noodle man. Now, the noodle man, there's also the massage man as well, but it works in the same way. But the noodle man is a lot more controversial because typically, international safety laws prohibit crew from having cooking, implements inside their cabins, just like passengers aren't allowed either.
Yeah.
Now that obviously makes sense, but there's always one or two noodle men who are on board who you can literally call as a black, there's sort of like a black market going. And there is a bit of a black market, where you can call, and not that I never did this. I mean, people go, "Oh, you're lying." I genuinely didn't do this. I didn't need to spend my money this way, but I know people did. You call the number, and they'd be literally making noodles in their cabin. And this is food that comes from the galley, because most of the people with the same nationalities, so they all sort of like black market get the food from. Now, cruise lines obviously don't enjoy the fact that this goes on. We do regular crew rounds where you're supposed to, if this equipment gets caught, you get fired, you get sent off the ship. Also, it's very, very, very against policy. So I'm not by any stretch endorsing it, nor do I think that it's right that it happens. But these are just the kind of things that do happen when you've got an entire ecosystem dominated by a couple of main nationalities. Mostly for Princess, it's Filipinos and Indians, with a little bit of Indonesian mixes in there, and some South American countries and Eastern European countries. When you've got large conglomerates of nationalities, there is a bit of a communal sort of aspect to it all. And so that often then can create these sort of adjoining sort of parallel communities that go alongside the mainstream, versus the not so mainstream communities sort of. And these are the kind of things that can come out of it. But there's a little bit of a secret there. But no, if you go on a ship, don't expect to be able to get you don't need the noodle man to get you food. Room service is great enough. Trust me. The main dining room's a lot better. It's just one of those like sort of small comforts that come from, not having access to that food, particularly the times of night you can ask for it too. But definitely like one of those little secrets of below deck that I believe still occurs today. So
I'll tell you what, I think that's funny. Now, so you also do like weddings and corporate events and all that kind of stuff. And I've been doing that for a long time as well. I've been on stage since I was 15. So giving away my age, 45 years. So people see it as a glitz and glamour. What, that'd be so good. It's so, but it's not. So what's it really like? What's, or like, let's say weddings. So what's it really like? Are you gonna spill the beans on anyone?
Look, I will preface this and say, like, I truly love weddings. I really do. They're a great bread and butter for me in the sense that it's the highest volume that I do throughout the year. I mean, I did 50 weddings in 2022 as an example. So, and I love that. And I
Wow.
want those numbers to increase. I'd love to do it probably around 75 weddings per year. 100 if, depending on the demand and how things go, and also depending on how many corporate events I get as
Yeah.
well. But certainly, like, it's a great number. I'm very proud of it. But it also is like, I'm part of 50 people's memories. I'm part of
Yeah.
50 people's journeys in life. I'm part of 50 people's special day. And that is really special for me, that I've been trusted so many times in
Yeah.
1 year just to deliver these beautiful memories and perfect, flawless, happy wedding evenings and receptions that they're going to last a lifetime. Honestly, look, it's a way. I think with any kind of event and any kind of career, just like ours, it's what you make of it. So if
Mm.
you're the kind of person that is gone too far into the egotistical, narcissistic, driven side of being an entertainer performer, you're not going to enjoy performing the same reasons maybe you first started out as. And I've seen many people. I'm a professional stage manager as well. So often I'll do some really big high-end stuff that I'm not quite sort of being considered for just yet, although I'm definitely on the verge of that as I continue
Yeah.
my career in the corporate world. And I see a lot of them they'll show up, they've been paid far more than I'm getting paid right now. And they go straight to the green room, can only come out in the rehearsals when they need to, straight to the green room again, no interaction with the audiences, only following the script, only following what. And I'm saying, look, they're definitely doing what they're being paid to do. I'm not going to deny that.
Mm.
And I'm not being critical in that sense. Really missing is that old school sense of really hosting the night, host being the
Yeah.
energy, being the vibe, being the connection. And so every event that I do, maybe a wedding, maybe a corporate event, I love just getting myself immersed into it all.
Mm.
And so I'm definitely not one of those jaded, I've been doing this for too long, because there are some people I meet in the wedding industry that are like that. There are people that I wish that really weren't working with me that night and weren't selected by the bride and groom or whoever the couple may be, because they take away all the oxygen and energy that I'm putting out there
Yeah.
by being real sad saps. Now, I will
Yeah.
say I don't work with those people too often, thankfully, but definitely it can be tiring. It can be long. They're long days. You're spending 8, 10, 12 hours, depending on what kind of, job you're doing for the gig, at this event, and you're showing up early or leaving at the end, or at least I certainly do. I do the whole event.
Yeah.
And it can, it's taxing. I get into my car like tired, and people say like, oh, how do you do the energy? How do you get in there? When I'm doing line dancing on the dance floor, or I'm doing my games and activities with everybody and all this kind of stuff, like, how do you like keep going and not sit down? I just go, I guess it's just part of my cruise ship sort of deal, where we were going from 8 o'clock in the morning all the way to 12 o'clock at night. But also just generally, I mean, if you love what you do, you don't want to stop doing it. And so for me, I have a really positive, sort of optimistic and, lively attitude behind it.
Yeah.
But I have seen people who are jaded. I've seen people who don't match where I'm coming in. I have to then sort of like do more in order to fill
Yeah.
their gap that they're leaving. But then I've worked with some people, particularly in the most like couple of recent months. I've worked with some extraordinarily great people from all different vendor categories, and they've really inspired me. Like on the night, we just get together and we're just like,
Yeah.
it's all of us are contributing in our own different ways in a really positive way. And guess who gets the best benefit out of it? The couple
Yeah.
and their guests. And
Yeah.
that for me, when I know I get in the car at the end of the night and I go, what a beautiful top 10 out of 10 evening. That's just, and then, you get the review at the end, you get the message that comes in the next day or whatever. Those are the cream of the crop, cherry on top kind of things. But certainly I'm very grateful for all of it. Just that trust to make
Yeah.
sure that we're taking care of their special day it really means a lot to me. So I have a very vibrant idea and feel about weddings.
Yeah. I agree with you about that. Yes, you've got to be paid, and that's something that I struggled with for a long, long time, asking for what I'm worth. But
Yeah.
when you love it, the money doesn't matter. Like
Absolutely.
it's out of the picture. Like it's transaction, it's done. But when you're there, it's the vibe of immersing yourself. I think that's a key word. And I was listening to someone else saying on a podcast the other day talking about it wasn't immersing. They talked about, deep diving, but for years I've talked about immersion, and I think that you that's exactly what you're saying. Do you know, when you immerse yourself in the energy, it's not work. Like, it's not hard.
Oh God, no, it's not.
You
No,
work hard,
like
but
I can't even imagine doing anything else in my world at the moment. Like
yeah,
it's people say, oh, why did you quit the ships? Because they think, oh, ships are just this amazing thing. And I say, you're not wrong. I still have extraordinarily fond memories and
mm,
gratitude towards the fact that I was welcomed into that world.
yeah,
I've set a legacy at Princess in my corporate time as well that I spent there. I've created some of the largest game shows that Princess is now currently
wow,
re-rolling out after COVID. So like I'm really proud of like the impact, and I've been able to say, yes, I left a mark on Princess Cruises
yeah,
forever.
yeah,
And so that was fantastic. And I've got plans potentially down the line to also continue to contribute back with the capacity of my business now. But that being said, like I know that I've just moved on to another chapter and now
mm,
have the ability to, go all across Australia and hopefully internationally one day to bring my energy, vibe, and excitement and energy to the masses to make them feel like no other. And that for me is just it. There's no other greater feeling than knowing that at the end of the day, you've made people's memories and they've stuck there forever. Can't beat it. You just
no,
can't
no,
beat
I
it.
agree. I agree. There's a lot of people who would say public speaking is
Mm.
worse than death. In fact, most people say that. Like that, I actually think the only people who don't say that, well, apart from those of us who do who don't feel it, but
Mm.
I think once you face death, you kind of go, let me review that.
Yeah.
Actually, that's probably not. That's probably not the best. But how do you overcome the fear of speaking? Just from your perspective, and I know you're not a public speaking coach or anything like that, but
Mm.
there will be people listening to this saying, "Oh God, I could never be like that." I'm just not an extrovert. I blah 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 blah. But at some point in time, every single person has to face public speaking of some sort. And I know they're
Yes.
not. I know they're not the MC, or they're not, doing something, a great big host or something. But what's a tip for overcoming that, or how do people overcome that? Do you know it? Do you know?
Yeah, I can definitely answer to that. And I've been asked that many
Yeah.
times before. I think the first thing I like to say is get out of your own head. And what
Yeah.
I mean by that is that remember, you kind of already just said it then. They're not the MC, they're not the host, they're not like being paid like you and I in order to be there's no general like contracted expectations that you must follow in order to justify why you're there in the first
Yeah.
place. And so, and some of you say, oh, but no, but the boss asked me to do this or whatever. It's like at the end of the day, you got to remember the context. You're not being paid professionally to do it.
Yeah.
You're not coming in saying, you haven't overpromised saying, oh, I'm the best MC in Australia or something like that.
Yeah.
You're just being asked to do something for whatever reason you've been asked to do it that's outside of your normal job description or role description, or whatever.
Yeah.
So that what I mean by getting out of your head is just being aware that the expectations are far lower than what they would be if I was on stage instead.
Mm.
And that's great. That means you can take all that weight off your shoulders, thinking you have to like meet some sort of incredible deadline of accomplishments and sort of KPIs and achievements within that one little frame of time, because no one's expecting you that. They're not putting you to that high esteem. Secondly, slow down. You need to slow down. And I know that's tricky because a lot of people's initial reaction is I want to either get over and done with, or just I'm so nervous that I don't know how to regulate my own speech.
Yeah.
But being self-aware. And I used to do this when I was a kid, I used to speak so quickly, and then eventually I turned it down. And I learned how to use speed as part of, creating excitement or slowing it down and then bringing attention to certain aspects of my prose. But for you, who's just wanting to just get through it and be at least levels of successful through it, slow down, because it's easy to get every word out and to say less words than it is to say a million things per hour with your head stuck down on the iPad or the piece of paper.
Yeah.
And you're going to lose the impact that comes from it. Thirdly, because of the context of why people know that you're there in the first place, they're generally going to be on your side.
Mm.
So again, that's another level of confidence and sort of grace I want to offer you if you're listening, is that, people are going to be there to support you. And I know this happens quite a lot because professional MCs only do a very small portion of all the weddings that occur every year. So the vast majority of them are getting friends and family or the DJ MC, whatever. But for those of you who are just, roped in as the friend or family doing it, you're already going there with a primed audience who are like so appreciative that you're giving it a go, as they'll say.
Yeah.
So they're on your side. So unless you don't go in with this intent to like be the funniest comedian or to have to satisfy some level of thing you saw on YouTube that you think, oh no, that's the ideal. Like, for instance, don't watch my videos and try to emulate me. I'm just going to put it out there. Don't do that. Don't do that for anybody, because it will set you up to be something that you're not.
Yeah.
So instead, ask yourself, who am I? And then bring the best parts of you out slowly and confidently, knowing that people are going to be supporting you every step of the way. And this applies even just like anecdotally when I'm doing introductions to speeches at weddings, for instance. It's the same thing. There I've had some bridesmaids and some groomsmen who've been absolutely terrified of it. And I do a couple of things. Obviously, I'll give them a nice pep talk and say virtually all this stuff, but a little bit shorter. But then I'll also then get up on stage and remind them by getting the audience to give them like a really big supportive round of applause. And I'll say, folks, look, let's be honest, Sally, she's a bit nervous. And they kind of go, oh, you have to say that. But I go, no, it's fine. Ladies and gentlemen, come on, folks, you're with me on this. Sally's going to do an amazing job, right? And we're like, yeah, she's so great. And then they kind of go, oh, okay. And then they just do the best speech and it comes off. And sure, they may be like desperate to hand the microphone back to me like it's a plague, at the end of it.
Yeah.
But they did it so much better, and they knew at least they could see visually and hear audibly that the audience was on their side. And that is almost always the case. So don't get too in your head, slow down and know the people on your side and be your best self, and you'll be amazing.
Yeah, I love all that, and you're absolutely right. And the other thing is too that people feel like everyone's just focusing on them and judging them, but hardly. And like you said, everyone's on your side. Hardly anyone's judging you. I also love that you said about getting out of your head, and that's because when we're in our head, we've got this speech lined up. And we've got to not miss it. We're like robotic, because we've got to do everything. But one thing I always say, and it's exactly what you're saying, speak from your heart. Like, what is your truth? Just speak from that place of, and you connect with everyone. I love it. So if anyone wants to do what you're doing, which is next level up, what does it take? What are the characteristics? And I'm saying that some are natural talent, and that sort of thing, but I also think that you can learn, you can learn great skills. So
100% you can learn. I mean, I was not anywhere near the stages where I was at now when I first started ships, and certainly before that I went through other degrees of stages of development as well. And so, and I'm constantly learning every single gig, every single day. So you never get, if anyone ever says to you, I've hit the peak now, I know everything. They're rubbish because they're not learning anymore. How can they do it? Well, first off, I would say just have a chat with people, like actually like sit down off your time to that person and say, hey, can we get a coffee? Can we chat on Zoom, whatever, and actually get the insights directly. I'd be more than happy to. I've had people in the past reach out and say, I'd love to pick your brain, because you'd be surprised the kind of questions, if you really are passionate, you'd be surprised the kind of questions to come out from a conversation like that. And how to discover your levels of intrigue. And also what you're trying to do is you're trying to discover the things about that person that you like, that you can absorb and sponge, and the things that about their style and personality that perhaps don't resonate well with you, so you can sort of discard. And what will happen eventually is you'll start to build this repertoire of how others are around you and what's made other people successful. You'll eventually then align certain of those characteristics and traits to your own personality and style, and eventually you'll discover this beautiful treasure trove of things you're really great at, that you can deliver on stage as part of your personality, and things that you need to avoid that don't work so well for you, that perhaps work well for other people but don't work for you. For instance, if you're generally seen as like a really, really kind and generous soul that wouldn't hurt a fly, coming out and doing a roast is not going to work. So, but you can only be aware of that, of course, if you make a mistake and do it and, retroactively look upon it and go, oh, that didn't
and
hit
it all
well.
fails.
But also that brings up a second point about also, making sure that actually I should bring up one main point. practice, go and do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
If you don't
Yeah.
go and do it, and you sit from your
100
armchair and,
points.
watching all the YouTube videos in the world ain't going to teach you how to do it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's nice to get inspiration. It's nice to see what other people are doing, but realistically, the only things you're going to glean from YouTube videos is when you've actually really made it. So then you can start getting ideas of stuff that other people have done that you can incorporate into your repertoire. Until then, watching other people, it's not like watching how to fix a leaky tap and then you execute it exactly the same. It's not the same thing. It's a semantic skill that really takes time by practicing and being immersed. So look for opportunities to do it. Go to your local Toastmasters and say, I want to do it. If your boss says, need for someone for the conference, go be the person that speaks at the conference. It's okay to not have smash out of the park amazing gigs the first time you do it. When you want to, if you, let's say, for instance, you've done all those things and you're beginning to really start to, okay, no, I really see I've got something here. Then you need to make a decision about, you need to define who you are to yourself and then how you can bring that to other people. So when I first started the industry in the local industry back in 21, after my brother's wedding, I was like, okay, I need to define to the audience why I'm different. I need to tell them, look them in the eye and say, this is what I am bringing that is different from others you could pick out there.
Yeah.
And this is separate to, setting up a business. That's a whole other concept. And I could certainly have conversations with other people for another time about how to do that. But just generally in terms of the on-stage stuff, it's about knowing what makes you different, what makes you exciting, what makes you dynamic, and then being able to crystallize that in a written form so then people become interested, and also how to actually speak it on a video and in person. What else? And I think one other thing is learning how to communicate and how to also connect with people. In a pinch, to do something that I do, the best MCs and the best hosts out there, the old school cruise directors that I learned from, were masters of remembering people's names, remembering information about them, and never making it about themselves. It is such a fine line out there between looking like an egotistical so-and-so who only cares about themselves, only wants to put their best foot forward, and then on the flip side, making it about their guests and making it about others. It is such a fine line. And the best way to do that is to not talk about yourself. Now, it seems really tough because talking about yourself is super easy. You're the expert, you're the knowledge expert number one on it. However, no one cares at all. And I know that's really hard to hear. It's really hard to hear. Now, but I caveat that because some people say, "Oh no, I've got a whole bit on stage where I talk about myself." No. I think, yeah, I know that. That's because you've built enough of a reputation that people are interested in you, and there's a vested interest in who you are, and so that people want you to unlock that as part of an exclusive expose on stage. And I'm sure you've done this on your shows, right, where you've given a piece of you, but they've come specifically for you, so that's okay.
Yeah.
As a wedding MC or as a corporate MC, people aren't coming for me. They're coming for the charity we're making money for, obviously for the couple, whatever. Nowhere in the description are they coming for me. And so while during the pros of the evening, as I go along in my patter, sure, there may be like little quips here and there that I'll add as comedic benefit to something that may relate to me that I can anecdotally bring out. But rarely do I find those opportunities because I don't manufacture them. And so if they come up organically, great. I'll say something funny, like, I don't know, something will happen, and I might make a little joke saying, "Oh, this is why I'm still single," like something like that, that's funny. But it's quick, it's relatable, and it's not really specific. It's not, "Oh, let me tell you a 5-minute story now so I can get to the punchline." And the punchline's still me, surprise, and see, here I am. No one cares. So just go in being focused on connecting with the people around you, bringing the best out of them, endearing your audience, endearing your clients, endearing your couples if you're going to weddings, and you will get to bring yourself out through what you do. So, but if you're too worried about people having to remember that you're the number one and you're the one on stage, you're the one with the microphone, seriously reevaluate your position in this industry and what you want to get out of it, because it's going to disappoint you the first time you work with a live band, for instance. I'm a classically trained pianist too, so I understand this, but with the first time that they'll get up there and they'll just do like a sound check, bring on the guitar, all the people in the room like, "Oh my God, he's so talented." And I've been entertaining them for 5 hours. If you don't like that, if you think that would be hell for you, and you'd get a real sort of, how dare they be good musicians and be liked for it, don't do this job. You're gonna hate it. It's a position of service. It's a position of humility. It's a position of constantly taking the second step. And the more that you do it in a natural and not like an overly modest, pathetic kind of way, like, oh no, it's not about me, it's not about me. Like,
Yeah,
obviously not
yeah,
making light of it. You can do that and you're okay with it and you're good with it, and you can thrive in that environment, you'll go far.
yeah. I love it. I love it. And I think that it's just such a, I love when you said don't manufacture. You were talking about don't manufacture stories about yourself, but don't manufacture either getting up there being a show pony, you know, and making it shallow and show ponyish. Like it's awful. I've seen people do that, and it's almost narcissistic. You know,
Yes, it is.
it's awful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I think when you're talking about connecting, I think that's a skill, but I also agree with you that if it's connect because you care. Just care about the people in the room.
I mean, imagine if you're like, if you're going into a room, right? And it's so easy to find. You can sniff it in a heartbeat that people are coming in. And this is what I see people do who try to connect, but they really don't actually care. They come in, and I've seen celebrity MCs do this. I've seen a lot of comedian MCs do this because they paid a lot of money just for their personality and for the fact they had a Netflix show or whatever. I respect that. I respect that hustle, but they come in and it's just like, it's like, oh, hi, how's it going? And you can see this person's like really wanting to talk to this person, like, oh, you're amazing. Okay, I've got to go, but we'll talk later. We'll talk later. It's all this like emphasized like body language movements, and like you're not talking natural. You're talking like you're talking to I don't know, like on a TV show, like you're acting it all out, and it just. For me, I just watch it all take place. And I'm like, oh, geez, that was so hard to watch.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that.
So bad.
It's awful.
So bad.
Yeah. Yeah. But there is hope for people who want to do public speaking. And, you know, it's, I don't think it's worse than death. I think it's the most fantastic thing on the planet. But I do understand that some people are scared of it. So, but thank you very much, Nathan, for all your tips and tricks and everything else. And it's been fantastic speaking to you. I would love to see you on a cruise, but we're not going to meet on a cruise. We're not going to cross.
No, unfortunately not. Not
I'm
at
not
least.
going.
But I'd be more than happy to meet anybody listening, and yourself, of course, at any wedding or corporate event that I'm invited to perform at. So and I've got plenty more ideas for the future in terms of where my career will grow. But no, we would love to meet any of you listening to be a part of my audience, just because I love to get to meet you, love to get to know your name, and to have you incorporated into the experience, no matter if it's a wedding or a corporate event or anything else in between, festivals, like anything really. I just love when people get together and a good plan comes together nicely, and it just makes memories. That is just the essence of life. We've been missing that quite a lot in the last couple of years, particularly when we really brought to the light how much human beings need that. And being a purveyor of that, I feel really privileged and honored that I was blessed with this on this earth. So just gonna keep on doing it, and no one can stop me. So.
No, I agree. And if anyone's listening to this in the Sydney area specifically, but anywhere else as well, and you're thinking about getting married or you have a corporate event coming up, Nathan is amazing. So please consider him. Now, if people are considering that, where can they find you?
Sure, yeah. So my website is nathancassar.com.au. You're welcome to find all my main social links is there. I'm continuing next coming months. I'm actually going to be upgrading all of my I've got about 20 new galleries to post up. I think more than 20. So there's a lot. I plan on putting a lot of content on there, even more than already is now. So there were more than, and my YouTube page is also quite up to date at the moment with a number of my videos. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and I've just started Pinterest, although I'll hopefully have that more. There's a lot of social medias. It's hard to keep up. Can't find me on TikTok yet. I'm not sure if I'll make that yet permanent or not, but we'll see. 5 social media pages is already a lot to deal with. But feel free to drop me a line, mc@nathancassar.com.au. That's my email address. Drop me a DM on Facebook or Instagram, whatever it may be. Give me a call. People don't call anymore. So we'd love to have a chat. But either way, if you're wanting to get into the industry, or of course, if you are interested in me transforming your event into truly unforgettable, let's chat.
Fantastic. I'm going to put all those in the show notes anyway. So and they are all very active. I hear what you're saying about keeping up five social media accounts. I can't do it. I'm beside myself
Too
trying to do all
much.
that sort of stuff.
Too much. Then I got my own website to deal with, and then it's like
Yeah.
my the wedding platforms, and then all the other like freelance
Yeah.
platforms. It's a lot. So it's a
It
bit
is
of a
a lot.
machine. That's why I am grateful to be one of the only full-time MCs in the industry. A very small group of us who don't rely on a another job in order to supplement the business. So
Yeah.
I'm grateful that I've had the trust of many different corporate and wedding couple clients in order to be able to make that possible. So thank you for any of my former clients. Thank you for allowing me to get to there, but also for all my future ones. I look forward to the opportunity to making your special day and event memorable.
And I know you will. It'll be bloody fantastic. So, and he doesn't just show up and read the script. He absolutely immerses. So, if you want a really good wedding MC or a corporate MC or whatever else you do, add the conga line. If you want the conga line and the venga bus, and you want all of those absolutely cool things at your next event, Nathan is the man. Nathan, thank you so very much for joining us. It's been absolutely fantastic chatting with you. You still haven't convinced me to go on a cruise ship, but
that's okay. That's all right.
That's okay. But you know, there's some absolute great advice there, particularly at the end, about public speaking and getting into this sort of field where it's not for everyone, but there might just be one person listening who's got that in their mind and in their belly and got a little fire going there. So it's really appreciate it. So thank you very much. Really, I've loved this chat. Really loved it.
Thank you. Same here.